Inside this video topic, we'll discuss and see an amazing syllabus of an interesting course over MySQL, and that is MySQL Stored Procedures. So here, this is very first video. So inside this very first video, we'll discuss the complete syllabus, that what other things we'll cover inside this interesting and amazing course, so that each and every concept of MySQL Stored Procedures will be clear throughout this course. So first thing first, let's get started about this complete syllabus. So we can see that we can cover this amazing and informative course from ground level. It means first we understand that what is the definition, it means what is MySQL stored procedure. Then we understand that what is delimiter. So once we complete the concept of delimiters inside this course, so after getting that concept, now we will start the concept of creating our first MySQL stored procedure. And then we'll discuss the types of parameters and the type of mode of parameters inside the stored procedure. So let me tell you, we have three mode like in parameter, out parameter and in out parameter. So what basically they are and how to use, why we use, all these concepts we'll discuss step by step when we go inside this MySQL stored procedure course. And once we cover all these things, then we'll discuss about the concept of how to use MySQL variables inside MySQL stored procedures. And then obviously, once we complete all these things, we'll include a very interesting concept that is all about conditional statements. So inside this conditional statement, we'll discuss the important concept of if cases. It means if statement, if and else statement, and MySQL switch cases statements. So this amazing concept also will be a part of this MySQL course. Then we'll discuss that what is loop, how to use loops inside our declarative statements inside MySQL stored procedures, and finally one of the most important topic of MySQL, that is all about the concept of cursors. So we can see that this is our very basic syllabus. Step by step, we'll go from ground level to topmost advanced level. Now here we have the complete idea, complete concept to get step by step to complete this amazing and very informative MySQL course. Now the second question comes in your minds is that if suppose we are a complete beginner, so what is the prerequisite of this course? So let me tell you, to complete and get the entire concept of this MySQL stored procedure, you need only two things. First will be the open source, like free open source tool called phpMyAdmin. So once you get phpMyAdmin, so after installation of this, you will get MySQL database driver. So to get the complete concept of this MySQL stored procedures, you need only phpMyAdmin, and inside phpMyAdmin, you need only MySQL database driver. So apart from this phpMyAdmin, also if you have like MySQL Workbench, so obviously it will also work to get the entire concept of this amazing and very informative course. And at last, I have only a single request. If friends you think that this course is really very helpful, so please give us a thumbs up, like this amazing and very interesting course. Please do subscribe so that I will be creating such of amazing and interesting courses for you. In this video topic, we'll discuss the very basic idea about this course, and that is what is MySQL stored procedure. So if we get the complete idea before starting this complete course, it will be super easy to understand about each concept what we'll discuss step by step inside this amazing course. Let's go back to editor. So first thing first, what is MySQL stored procedure? So MySQL stored procedure is a set of declarative statements what basically we execute inside database. So here first we have to understand that what is a declarative statement in MySQL. So for example, let's say that inside our database we have a table called users, and inside this users table we have the columns as ID, name, email, phone number, and let's say designation. So as we know that if we want to insert any data inside this users table, we have to use call insert statement. And if we want to update any data, we have to use update statement. And the same pattern, if we want to select any data, we have to execute select statement. And finally, for delete data, we have to use delete statement. So in case if we want to do, for example, insert operation, we have to write insert command, and inside insert command we have to mention the table name the columns, and the values. So each MySQL command will be known as a declarative statement. So here, if we write a insert command to insert our data into users table, so each line of code will be a declarative statement inside MySQL. So in the same way, if we write a single command to update any record inside this users table, so that update command will be a declarative statement in MySQL. In the same way, for select statement and delete statement. Now here, let's understand one more time about the concept of declarative statement in case of any CRUD-based operations inside MySQL. So for example, if I want to insert any data inside users table, so the command will be something called insert into the table name we have users. I want to insert the value of name, email, phone, and designation. Then after that, here we have the values keyword, and inside parentheses we have to pass the first value, second value, third value, and fourth value. So this is known as a declarative statement in MySQL, because by the help of the single line command actually we are inserting a new record inside this users table. So in the same way, if we want to update any data, command will be update. Then here we have to pass the table name called users. For example, I want to update the name value or email value. So here name equals to, it will contain the updated name. In case also I want to update the phone number, so column, then here it will contain the updated phone number. And finally, we have to add some condition. So here, where id equals to, for example, 2 here. So this is also a declarative statement. So in this line of code, simply by the help of this id, we are updating some informations, for example, name and phone number of this user id too. In same way, if we try to talk about this select statement, so command will be select. Let's say I want to select all columns, so here star or asterisk here, so select asterisk from table name. So table name will be users. If I want to get all users, so this will be the command, or in the base of some specific conditions, so where id equals to 2. So simply this is also a declarative statement. Now in case if we talk about this delete statement, so command will be delete from table name called users, where, let's say where id equals to 2. So this is also a declarative statement. It means that by the help of this id equals to 2, we are deleting a specific record from this users table. So we can see that here we have some MySQL statements, that is insert command, update command, select command, delete command. So each line of code of this MySQL will be known as declarative statement. Now next, if I talk about MySQL Stored Procedure, so as I told you that it is a set of declarative statement, which simply means that we have more than one MySQL command, we have more than one declarative statement. So let's open a new tab. So here we'll have some syntax to write a MySQL stored procedure. So inside MySQL stored procedure, we have a keyword, and inside those keyword, basically we can define our entire logic of MySQL stored procedure. So simply it will start from begin keyword and it will end at end keyword, and inside this begin and end keyword we can define the entire logic, we can define the set of all MySQL statements what basically we want to execute inside a stored procedure, and the concept of a stored procedure we define inside a database. So now here, if anyone asks from you that what is the difference between a declarative statement and MySQL stored procedure, now at this time it is very simple to answer that by the help of declarative statement we can execute or we can do any specific operation. For example, insert statement like insert operation, update operation, select operation, or delete operation. So by the help of declarative statement we can go and execute only a single operation at a time. But by using MySQL stored procedure, if we define all the logical concept inside this begin and end keyword, so we can execute more than one MySQL declarative statements. So this is the very simple difference between a single line command and a MySQL stored procedure. Now let's discuss that where basically we can create a MySQL stored procedure inside phpMyAdmin. So if I go back to browser, so here let's create a database. So click on databases, and if I create, for example, let's say test underscore db. So if I click on this create button, now you can see that database created. So as I told you that this is a phpMyAdmin, a free open source tool. By the help of that we can interacting with this rdbms, it means relational database of MySQL. So here inside this database we can see that here we have multiple tabs called structure, SQL, search, query. So inside these tabs here we can see a tab called routines. So if I click on this routines, and now here we can see a button called create new routines. So whenever if I click on this button, it will open a model, and we can see here, so inside this model we can see that we have to pass the routine name, and this is MySQL store procedure name. So once we pass here we have a type drop down, something called procedure and function. So it means by the help of this interface, by the help of this logical body, we can create a MySQL store procedure inside this database. So here inside this course we'll discuss three methods to create stored procedure inside MySQL. So first will be very simple by using the manual interface tool, what we're seeing in format of this model. So how to use this model, how to pass these values to create a stored procedure, we'll discuss the entire concept into our next video. So this will be your first option. Second option we'll discuss by using our MySQL command how to create a stored procedure inside a database. And third, by using MySQL CLI, it means by using command line interface tool. So here inside this course we'll discuss three methods to create a stored procedure inside MySQL. And one more thing before closing this video, let's open a duplicate tab. So if you are wondering that this option is visible at the database label or if we go inside a specific table, so let me tell you that this option called routines or create new routine option will be available if we are at the database label. For example, if I go here, let's open any of the database here. So I'm going to open this, for example, WordPress underscore tuts. So we can see that right now we are inside a database. So at this time, this option is visible. But once we go inside any table, for example, WP options, and now we can see that that option is now invisible from this tab section. It means all the routines, all the procedures what we create should be at the database label. So successful. Now in this video we have the idea, some basic idea that what is a declarative statement and what is a MySQL stored procedure. So step by step, now we have started to get the complete concept about MySQL stored procedures. So this video topic will discuss a very important concept and informative about MySQL stored procedure, and that is MySQL delimiters. Let's go back to editor. So inside last video, now we have a bit idea about that what is a declarative statement and what is a MySQL stored procedure. Let me give you one more time that what is a declarative statement. So declarative statements are those statements inside MySQL which can be executed for any specific operation. For example, here we have some spelling mistake. So this is insert command. We can see, and by the help of the single line command we can go and insert any specific informations inside this users table. So this is an example of declarative statement. So here we can see this is about the updated statement. So this command simply means that by the help of these updated informations and the ID of user, simply we can update the existing informations inside users table. So this is also an example of declarative statement. Now here we can notice that after writing each declarative statement, here we have a semicolon. So semicolon inside MySQL simply means that this is the complete command of MySQL what we can execute into MySQL database to do any specific operation. Now if I go into the concept of MySQL Stored Procedure, so inside MySQL Stored Procedure, as I told that it is a set of MySQL declarative statement. Now in this case, how to manage about each line of command, because inside each line of command inside MySQL, at last here we have the semicolon. So here to manage all about the logical body of MySQL stored procedure, we have to use a special concept inside MySQL, and that is MySQL delimiter. So inside MySQL, delimiter simply means that we can execute a group of a set of declarative statements. Now let's take an example to understand. So here I will go and copy this insert statement. Let's paste here. Then I will copy this update command, paste here, and let's copy this select statement and paste here. So for example, let's say that I want to do operation of insert command, update command and select command. So in terms of declarative statements, simply what we have to do, we have to copy this first line command because this is a complete command. We have terminated using semicolon. So just we have to go and copy, go inside MySQL database, click on SQL tab, paste here the entire command and click on go button. So whenever if I paste this command, this will insert a new row inside users table. So in the same pattern, if I paste this command will go and update users table on the basis of id equals to 2. In the same way, this command is go and select the user to specific data. So we can see that if we want to execute these three declarative statements, so we have three executions in MySQL. But here comes the trick. If I want to execute into a single execution, now here comes the concept of MySQL Stored Procedure. So as I told that a MySQL Stored Procedure is going to execute a bulk of a set of a list of declarative statements. But here before execution a set of declarative statements, also we have to inform MySQL that this is a complete group what we have to execute on single execution. So it means by using delimiters we can inform MySQL processor that this is a complete list what we have to execute on single execution. So it's very simple. So here let's say that this is a complete set. So before going to set, here let's use delimiter keyword. So delimiter, and here we have to pass some like something special characters. So for example $2, and here we'll have the create procedure statement, that is create procedure. Then here we'll have the procedure name. Then here we have the begin and end block, and inside this begin and end block, here we have the complete list of MySQL declarative statements. So as we can see that here we have the delimiters what we have used. This is the opening of MySQL stored procedure, and after this end block simply $sign. So this syntax like this delimiter and this delimiter simply means that this is a complete list which we have to execute on single execution. And finally here let's say delimiter and semicolon. So what basically we did, we created a group of command, and after putting semicolon, now MySQL understands that okay, this is a single command from here to here and it will execute on a single execution. So to wrap or to create a group of declarative statements into a single line of execution, simply we have to use the delimiter keyword. Then we have to use a delimiter pattern, a delimiter something as special characters. This is something a starting of MySQL stored procedure. Then here this is a keyword, this is a keyword, this is a stored procedure name which is user defined. So here begin and end block simply means that inside this logical body we can create the entire concept of any MySQL stored procedure. And now next after this, here we have the AND keyword, and after this AND keyword here we have the delimiter pattern, which simply means that here we have the complete set of declarative statements what basically we want to execute into a single line of execution. And finally after this all the logical things, here we have the delimiter keyword again and semicolon, which simply means that inside MySQL this is a complete command. So in summary, if I go here So if I want to execute only a single line of declarative statement, simply we have to type the complete command, put a semicolon, and now MySQL will execute and do that specific operation. But if we want to execute a group of a set of declarative statements, so simply we have to use the delimiter keyword. Inside delimiter, we have to use any special characters. For example, let's use double at the rate or simply double percent. And here we have the create statement. So create processor. Then here our store processor name. Then here our begin. And here this will contain the logical concept, and finally here what the delimiter we have used, simply put here so that this is a complete block. And finally, to inform MySQL that we have a complete group, so simply delimiter keyword and put a semicolon. Now once you put semicolon, now this group will become a single line command, which basically MySQL executes all these logical body into a single execution. So this is the overall concept what basically we will implement from the next video to create any stored procedure inside MySQL. So let's go inside MySQL database, and here inside the SQL tab, if I try to write the same line of code here, so simply delimiter keyword we can see, put a double ampersand, that is starting off our delimiter syntax. Then here create processor, then processor name. So for example, let's say that get list of users, but as we know that for the time being there is no tables created inside this database, so this is only for the demonstration. So here our stored processor name, then here we have the begin and block, and after this and we have to close this delimiter. So simply copy, put here, and finally here after this and keyword, let's say delimiter, not delete, it's delimiter and semicolon, and inside this begin and end we have to write all the logical concept. So this is the step by step to create a stored processor inside MySQL. Now after getting the concept of delimiter, now hopefully from the next video we'll create some tables inside this database, and by the help of those tables and a set of declarative statement, first we'll create our first MySQL stored processor inside that video. Inside this video topic, we'll discuss and see the concept to create MySQL stored procedures inside a database. So to create a MySQL stored procedure, we have to use create procedure or MySQL command. So what is the process and how to create a stored procedure inside database? All these concepts we'll discuss inside this video topic. Let's go back to editor. So inside last video, we have seen the concept of MySQL delimiters. So MySQL delimiters simply means that if we want to execute a group of MySQL commands, a group of declarative statements, so in that case we have to use the concept of delimiters. So here, if we go again back to the same syntax, so we can see that delimiter, here we have a delimiter symbol. Either we can use this syntax, this syntax, this syntax. So what basically we pass here, the same syntax we have to return like after this AND block. So here delimiter syntax. Now here we have create processor or MySQL command. So create processor, then we have to pass the store processor name, then we have to go and define the begin and end body block. So inside this begin and end keyword, we have to pass the logical concept or the stored processor, the body concept. And finally, this is complete a single command that we have to execute on single execution. So that's why delimiter and semicolon. Now in this video, we'll discuss the concept that how to create a MySQL stored procedure using create procedure or MySQL command. Next, after this, what we have to do. So first thing first, as we know that inside our database, we don't have any tables. So first thing first, we have to create some table so that on the basis of those tables, we can learn the concept of stored procedures. So what I will do, let's go back to browser, go inside that database called test_db, and here I'll use phpMyAdmin, the manual interface, to create a table schema. So here we can see database click on structure, and here we have create new table. So simply I will pass the table name, for example users, number of columns, let's say equals to 4. Click on create button. Now here we have a new interface where we have to provide the informations of column, their data type, and their default values. So here let's say that ID, name, email, and let's say phone number. So these are the columns what I need inside users table. Now here let's say type of this column is equals to int. It is okay. For name value it is going to contain the string value, so varchar, let's say 80 characters will be in length. Email value varchar, let's say 80 characters in length. Phone number, let's say varchar, and here let's say 30 characters in length, and the default value, so let's say that default value I want that this column is going to contain the null value, so null here, and null here. So after passing all these details, and one more thing, I want that this id column should be primary key. So here inside this structure we can see auto increment. Click on this checkbox. We want that this column should be a primary key. So here inside this index dropdown, primary will be selected. So once we do this table schema, click on save button. Now successfully our first table now created inside our database called users. So now next what we can do, let's click on this insert tab so that I will insert some dummy data here. So ID will be auto incremented now here. So this is first user, dummy email value, example.com. I will copy this email pattern, phone number, something, a dummy value. Click on go button. So successfully inside our users table, now first row now created. Again click on this insert tab. Let's go here, pass our second user, something, a dummy phone number. Click on go button, insert it. Again I will go and click on this insert tab, and here let's say this will be our third user, phone number. Now successfully inside this table, now we have three dummy rows. Next, after this, what I will do, I'll create a stored procedure inside this test underscore db database, so that once we execute that stored procedure, first thing first, I want to list all those data what we have inside this users table. So what we can do, let's click on the SQL tab, and one more thing, as I told that we can create our stored procedure at database label. So inside this table, we can see that we don't have any options of routine. Let's click on database. And now we can see that our routines tab. So simply once we go at the database label, click on this routines tab. So as I told that we have three methods to create a stored procedure by using manual interface tool, that is by the help of this click button and this model input fields, and second we'll have the option by using create procedure MySQL command, and lastly also we'll discuss that how to use MySQL, our command line interface tool, to create a stored procedure. So in this video, I'll discuss by using create procedure or MySQL command to create a MySQL stored procedure. So what we can do, let's go inside our database, close this model, click on the SQL tab, and here, let's say delimiter. So after delimiter, I will use a pattern, let's say double ampersand. Now next I will use our create procedure command to create our first stored procedure inside this database. So here create command, then here we have the procedure command, then we have to pass the stored procedure name. So right now what we want to select all those users what we have created inside users table. So simply I'll put the name, let's say get all users from users table, and here let's put the begin, which is the starting of this stored procedure, and finally here we have the end keyword. It means that inside this begin and end block we have to define the logical concept of this stored procedure. So here we have used this delimiter pattern, so simply copy and put after this AND keyword. Now as we know that this is a complete command, means this is a single command in terms of MySQL, we want to execute on single execution. So at last what we have to do, delimiter and semicolon. So once we put this semicolon, so MySQL automatically gets informed that this is a complete command, this is a single command what we have to execute and put inside stored procedure. So here, now as we know that we have to select all those data inside users table, so for the time being I'll use only a single command, single declarative statement, that is select all from the table name called users. Now this is the complete skeleton of our first MySQL stored procedure. So once we type all these things, let's go here, click on this go button, and now we can see that our stored procedure is successfully created inside this database. So once we create it, let's go inside this routines tab. And now we can see that inside this list, now here we have our first stored procedure, that is get all users from users table. And inside this list, look at here, we have execute button. So once we click on this button, behind the scene, it will call using call statement. So after call, the stored procedure name. So it will execute the call statement, and by the help of call statement, it will call this stored procedure to get all those data what we have inside users table. So either we can click on this execute button, let's click on it, and now we can see that behind the scene it has used call statement, call command, and here we have our stored procedure name. So once we execute, or once it has executed this command, now we can see that here we have the complete users list what we have inside our users table. So this is what we had executed after click on this execute button. But in case if we want to execute our own, so simply let's go and open a duplicate tab, click on this SQL tab. So here, call get all users the stored procedure name. So I will copy, this is the stored procedure name what we have created. So call and the name of that. Simply put a semicolon, click on this go button, and now we can see that successfully we have selected all those data. So this is that how to create a first MySQL stored procedure inside a MySQL database. So this time we followed the structure that by using create procedure or MySQL command, how to create the simplest MySQL stored procedure. Next, after this, let's create one more stored procedure inside our users table, so that once we call that stored procedure, it only lists the phone numbers what we have listed inside our database table. Let's go back to browser, go inside our database. Let's open this SQL tab into a new tab here. Now what we can do, simply delimiter. This time I will use double dollar. Then here let's say create command, procedure command. Let's say get all users phone number, and here let's say begin, and we have used double dollar, so let's close here delimiter and semicolon. Let's go inside this begin and end block. So here I want to select only the phone number. So if I go inside our database table, let's click here, go inside users table. So we can see that here we have the column, the name is phone underscore no. So here let's say select all from table name called users. So this time instead of selecting all columns, we want only the phone number. So once we do all these things, let's go and click on this go button. So successfully, now here we have created our second stored procedure. So let's go inside of this database. And here, if I click on this routines tab, now we can see that get all users phone number. So whenever if I click on this execute button, so successfully we can see that all those phone numbers what we have inside users table. Now here we have the clear concept, clear idea that how to use MySQL create procedure command to create stored procedures inside database. So this was with a very simplest body structure to create a stored procedure. But once we go step by step inside this course, once we see all those concepts, video by video. So you will notice, you will get the concept that how to use variables, how to use parameters and much more things inside this interesting journey of MySQL Stored Procedure. Inside this video topic, we'll discuss the very interesting concept about this course, and that is how to create a MySQL Stored Procedure using phpMyAdmin. Let's go back to browser. So inside last video, also the same concept we had discussed, that how to create a stored procedure, but in that video we had discussed that how to use MySQL create procedure command. But now in this video, instead of using create procedure command, we'll discuss that how to create a stored procedure using phpMyAdmin, the manual interface tool. So here, what is the process? What are those parameters? What basically we have to pass inside this phpMyAdmin so that we can create a stored procedure inside database. So simply, first we have to go inside this database, what we have created, click on routines tab. So already discussed, here we have button called create new routine. So simply let's click on this button, and here we have a model, and inside this model we have to pass some parameters, some value. So once we pass those values, automatically we can create a stored procedure inside this database. So for example, let's say that I want to list again all the users of users table. So here let's say get all users by stored procedure. Now here inside this drop down we can see we have two options, but we have to select procedure. We don't want any parameters right now inside this stored procedure. So inside this parameters, if I scroll, here we have a drop button, click on it. Now it's removed. So go inside this text area. So inside this text area we can define the logical body of this stored procedure. So simply just type begin keyword and keyword, and inside this begin and end we can pass the logical body, the logical concept of this stored procedure. So here I want to list all those users what we have inside users table. So simply let's say select all from the table name called users. Now here, once we write the logical body of this stored procedure, simply let's scroll. So here we have some options, that is deterministic, definer, security type, SQL database access. So all these things we'll discuss step by step inside next videos. For the time being, only we are focusing that how to create a stored procedure using phpMyAdmin. So once we do, like the name here, drop down value, that is processor, then the body here. So after passing all these things, simply let's click on this go button, and now we can see that successfully. Now here we have created a stored procedure inside our database, and here it is, get all users by stored procedure. So once we click on this execute button, and now we can see that behind the scene it has executed this stored procedure using this call statement. So here we have the call keyword, stored procedure name, and according to the body it has returned all the users what we have inside users table. So successfully, now here we have the second concept of this course, that is how to create a MySQL stored procedure using phpMyAdmin tool. Inside this video topic, we'll discuss a very interesting concept, and that is how to create a MySQL stored procedure using MySQL CLI. CLI stands for Command Line Interface Tool. Yes friends, already we have two ideas to create a stored procedure, either by using create procedure command or by using phpMyAdmin tool. Now in this video we'll discuss our third concept to create a stored procedure, and that is by using MySQL CLI. If I go back to browser, so inside last two videos, we have seen that how to create a stored procedure inside a MySQL database by using two methods. Now in this case, we'll use some commands, and by the help of our CLI, Command Line Interface tool, how to interact with our database, how to create a stored procedure. This interesting topic we'll discuss inside this complete video. Next after this, to create a MySQL stored procedure using CLI, first thing first, we have the full access over MySQL CLI access. Now here, as you can see that I'm using Windows operating system, so to get access, I have to open command prompt. But if suppose in your case, if you are using Ubuntu operating system, simply you have to open called terminal. So here, I am opening command prompt. Now also before getting the access of MySQL CLI, also we have to verify that MySQL must be installed. So to verify, simply I have to type call MySQL. If I hit enter, and now you can see that this is not recognized as an internal or external command. Now the question is how to go and enable this MySQL so that I can go and log in and create our first storage processor. So what we can do inside this Windows operating system are using this XAMPP server. So inside this XAMPP server, here we have a button called Explorer. Simply click on it. So once we click, it will go into the working directory or the folder structure of XAMPP. And here, after that, I have to go inside this MySQL. Then I have to go inside this bin folder and simply I have to copy this complete folder path. So click here. Now successfully after copy, let's go into our my computer so that the path what we have copied set as an environment variable. So here I'll go into my PC, this PC, click on properties, then I'll go and click on this advanced system settings, click on environment variables, and here inside this system variables right here, click on path. Click on edit here. Then I will go click on this new button and here inside this input box just paste that path. And now this is the bin folder of MySQL and this is the complete folder, complete path of XAMPP server. So simply let's click on OK, OK and OK. So what next? Simply here is the terminal. Right now MySQL is not recognized. Let's close and open one more time, and this time if I type MySQL hit, and now this time the error message has been changed. It means that successfully now the MySQL command is enabled and we are ready to use into to get access over MySQL CLI. Now next after this, simply we have to log in into MySQL console. Once we will be logged in, then we have to select our current database where we want to create our stored processor. So to log in into MySQL console, the command is very simple. It's MySQL -u, which is a flag for username. So after -u, put the username. So in my case, the username of PHMI admin is root. Then after that, we have to put one more flag that is -p and it's a flag for password. So in this case, we have two options to pass password. If I want to pass the password value directly here inside this connection string, so let's assume I have the password of PHMI admin is password. So after -p here the password. But let's say that I don't want the password value here. So simply after -p if I hit enter, and now you can see that it is asking a prompt for password value. So in my case the password is blank. So simply if I hit enter without passing any value, and now you can see that successfully I am logged in into MySQL console. So now after getting console access, let's try our first command. So simply if I go into our PHMI admin, click on this localhost and click on this database, and now you can see that currently in my system these are the databases. So for example, I want to list all these databases right here inside this console. So what is the command? So simply so databases, put a semicolon, hit enter, and now you can see that it has listed all the database what is currently available into my local system. Now in this case, as you can see that I'm using test_db to create a stored processor. So this database should be selected so that we can create our stored processor. So inside this database list, how to select this test_db? So it's very simple again. Simply let's say use right here, use, after use the database name called test_db, put a semicolon, hit enter, and now you can see that database changed. Now once we go into this database, we can see test_db. Simply we have to go and use again create processor command to create our stored processor. But one more thing before creating our first stored processor from this CLI, now let's execute our first command and see that how basically it works. So for example, let's say that I want to select a user's data. For example, I want to select this user ID too. So what is the command we have to type inside CLI to get this record. So let me tell you that we have to type the same command what basically we execute from the SQL tab. So let's go inside CLI. So for example, I want to select the user ID to the complete details. So here the database we are using called test_db. So inside this current database, let's say select asterisk, it means all, from the table name. So the table name we have called users where id equals to 2 semicolon. Now we can see that this is a complete declarative statement which basically selects the complete row where user id equals to 2. So once we type this command, hit enter, and now we can see that this is the user informations on the base of this id. So it means we have to write the same piece of code to create a stored procedure. Let's go into our VS Code, and here to create a stored procedure, as we know that we have to put delimiter. So for example, I want to use delimiter, for example this dollar. Now here create procedure, then the procedure name. So for example, I want to get, let's say, list all users. So simply let's say list all users, this is our processor name. Then we have to go put begin keyword and keyword dollar and then delimiter, so semicolon. And after this we have to go inside this begin and simply let's say select all from the table name we have called users. So this is the complete stored procedure what basically we have to create to list all users from CLI. Now here if I go into terminal or CLI. So what we can do, as we know that declarative statements always ends with semicolon, but we have to tell this CLI that okay, actually we are creating a stored procedure. So first thing first, also before typing anything, we have to change the delimiter, because by default delimiter inside MySQL is semicolon. So how to change? Simply we have a keyword called delimiter. So here delimiter, put dollar, it means I am changing semicolon to dollar, hit enter. Now delimiter has been changed. So simply create procedure, let's say list all users is the procedure name, list all users, parenthesis, hit enter. Then we have to type the begin keyword, hit enter. Then we have to type our logical body. So select all from the table name called users semicolon. As you know that this time semicolon will not work as a declarative statement because we have changed the delimiter sign. Now let's hit enter, and finally the AND keyword. So once we type the AND keyword, also we have to bind with this delimiter. So we have used dollar. So after AND keyword dollar, hit enter. Now successfully we can see that query OK, 0 rows affected. So it means our stored procedure now created. So to confirm, if I go into our database, let's go and click on routines, and now we can see that list all users. Now if we want to call this list all users stored procedure using this CLI, simply we have to first change our delimiter. So how to change? Simply delimiter, and we want again the semicolon. So after this keyword put semicolon, hit enter. Again delimiter has been changed, and if I want to call this, simply call a statement and list all users. So here list all users, put semicolon, hit enter, and now we can see that successfully by calling this stored procedure what we have created, now we have listed all the all the users now inside the CLI. So successful. Now this is our third way, that by the help of that how to create a stored procedure into our database. So successfully now we have completed one more interesting topic inside this MySQL Stored Procedure course, and that is how to create a stored procedure using CLI. Now in the next video, again we will discuss a very interesting concept, and that is what is a parameter, what are the different types of mode inside a stored procedure. Inside this video topic, we'll discuss again a very interesting concept about MySQL stored procedure, and that is how to create a parameterized stored procedure. Additionally, also we'll discuss the concept of in parameter mode. Let's go back to browser. So far inside this course, we have seen lots of informative concepts, lots of amazing things about MySQL Stored Procedure. Now this time, again I will discuss one more interesting concept, and that is how to create a parameterized stored procedure. So what basically it is, what is the syntax? So it's very simple. Let's go back to our VS Code editor. So here, so as we know that inside last videos, we had seen also the different methods. By the help of that, we can create a stored procedure. So for example, if I consider the last video topic, so where we had created list all users a stored procedure. So we can see that we are not passing any parameter while calling this stored procedure. But in this video, let's create a stored procedure where something called get single user data, and here we can pass user ID. So we can see that this is also a stored procedure. Again, this will be also will be a stored procedure, but in this case we can easily pass a parameter. So once we pass a parameter, on the basis of that we can go into the logical body of begin and end keyword, and on the basis of this condition called user ID, we have to pick only the specific informations of that user. So this interesting concept we'll discuss inside this complete video. Now here, to learn this amazing concept, let's go back to our database. Then I will go into SQL tab, or it's better, let's open a duplicate tab. So the first tab will be of the table, second tab will be of SQL tab. So inside the SQL tab, simply we have to use the concept of create procedure command, and by the help of that command, we can create our stored procedure. But here comes the trick that this time the stored procedure is not going to be very simple, because this time also we have to accept a parameter called user ID. So let me tell you that additionally also we have to use one more concept here, and that is in parameter mode. So the parameters what basically we accept into a stored procedure and will be used as a logical concept body inside begin and end block. So those parameters will be known as in parameter mode. As we can see that this user ID will be very useful, because by the help of that we have to fetch only single user information. So this is in parameter mode. So inside stored procedure, parameter concept is very simple. What we are passing is parameter, but here we have three types of parameter mode. We have called in parameter mode, then we have out parameter mode, and then we have in out parameter mode. So what basically these are, so right now inside this video we'll only use this in parameter mode, and it simply means that what the parameter what we are taking inside the stored procedure, simply we have to use as a condition inside our begin and end block. So here this is a parameter called user ID, and this user ID we can use inside our query so that we can filter only a single user information. And one more thing about in parameter mode, that these are protected in nature. It means what the parameters we are passing inside a stored procedure, if they are in parameter mode, simply they will be protected. It means what the manipulations what we do inside queries inside begin and end block, it always returns the copy of that variable. Now let's get started to create our first stored procedure, and that will be known as a parameterized stored procedure. So here let's go into our database, go into SQL tab. So simply first let's change delimiter. So delimiter, put a dollar. Then here let's say create procedure. So create procedure, let's say single user data, and here inside this parenthesis we have to accept a parameter, and remember that parameter will be in parameter mode. So here parameter mode call, we have the in, then a space. Here we have to pass the parameter name. So I want to put the name as user ID, and space, then its data type. So we know that user ID will be an integer value, so let's say int here. But in case, for example, if we have varchar, so in that case varchar, like varchar, and here we have to pass the length of that. For the time being we're using only the user ID, so it is int here. Now then here we have the begin and end block. After that put delimiter, and finally delimiter and semicolon. Let's go inside this begin and block. So select here all from table name called users, where the user ID, it means if you go inside table, click on users, So we can see that here we have the ID. So ID equals to, and the dynamic value we have to get from this in parameter mode. So here it will be user ID, put a semicolon. Now successfully, this is the complete logical concept of this stored procedure which is containing a parameter. So if I type everything, click on this go button, and now finally here we have created our first parameterized stored procedure. Now let's go into our database, click on routines here, and here we have single user data. If I click on execute button, and now we can see that it is asking for user ID, which is integer. We have to put a value. So for example, if I put, for example, it's a 3 here, click on go button, and now we can see that it is returning only a single user information. So instead of this execute button, if I go and let's open this SQL tab, so simply the same process like the call statement, then here it's a single. If I copy the stored procedure name, let's copy single user data, and here we have to pass the user ID. So for example, one, put a semicolon, either control enter or click on go button, and now we can see that here we have the single user information. Now this is that how to use our create procedure command to create our first parameterized stored procedure. But if you're talking about this tool that how to create in manual way, simply let's go inside this routines tab, click on this create new routine, and here let's say read single user data stored procedure. So type equals to procedure, and now we can see that parameter. So inside directions, now we can see that here we have three mode, that is in mode, out mode, in out mode. So just we have to select in here. Here let's say ID, or we may call it as user ID. Type equals to integer, its data type. Then we have to go here, let's say begin, and here, and now here let's say select all from table name, call users, where ID equals to the user ID, what we are taking as a parameter, put a semicolon, click on go button, and now we can see that successfully we have created one more stored procedure which is parameterized, which is taking user ID as a value. So here inside this list, let's click on this execute button. Let's pass, for example, 2 here, click on go button, and now we can see that successfully we are getting the single user data on the base of user ID. So from this video now we have one more idea about this course, about this stored procedure, and that is how to create parameterized stored procedure. And additionally also we have the concept of in parameter mode. Now in the next video we'll discuss our two more parameters mode like out parameter mode and in out parameter mode. Inside this video topic again we'll discuss a very interesting concept about this MySQL stored procedure course, and that is out parameter mode. So far from this course, now we have the complete idea, complete concept of what is a stored procedure, how to create a stored procedure, what is a parameterized stored procedure, and what is in parameter mode. Now from this video topic, we'll understand the concept of out parameter mode. Let's go back to editor. So if for example, if anyone asks from you that what is out parameter mode, so in summary, let me tell you that for example, this is a stored procedure, and this stored procedure is going to return the count of all the users inside a specific table. So for example, we have, let's say, a count value, let's say 5. This is the total users what we have inside our database table. Now this count value, what basically we will store into a parameter, and that parameter will be returned by this stored procedure, and that parameter will be known as out parameter mode. It means the parameter which is defined as out parameter mode, that parameter will return the final result of this stored procedure. Let's get started to create a very simple program. So here I will go into MySQL database. Let's open SQL tab into new tab. So here what basically we want, let's say that inside users table, as we can see here, we have total users equals to 3. Now for example, I want to create a stored procedure which is going to return the total users inside this users table. So here let's say delimiter, put a dollar here, and here let's say create procedure, create processor, count, total number of users, and here in return I want the total users inside our table, so those count like the count value of this stored processor I want to store into out parameter mode variable. So simply the parameter mode here we have to use called out here, then here let's say total count is the variable name, then its data type, so count value will be numeric, so let's say integer type, then here let's say begin, not between, it will begin, and end block. Then we have to go inside it, let's say select count function. I'll put a star to count all users from table name call users. Now comes the concept of this total count. So what basically I have to do, simply let's copy this variable, go here, so select count, it means it will return the total count into keyword and this variable. So simply we are counting all the users from this users table, and all those users, the total count like a numeric value will be stored into this variable. Now this is out parameter mode. So simply here let's delimiter dollar delimiter and semicolon. So once we type all this logical concept, let's go and click on this go button. Successfully one more stored processor created, now this time with out parameter mode. Let's go and click on this routines tab. Now here we can see count total number of users, click on execute button, and now we can see that here we have total number of users equals to 3. Let's discuss one more case and maybe it will create some confusion, but in that confusion we'll get the complete concept of this out parameter mode. So what I will do, simply I will go and let's create a new routine, or instead I will go and open this SQL tab into this new tab. So here let's say delimiter, put dollar here, then we have create processor, let's say count all users. This time I'm not going to pass any out parameter mode, here begin and end. Now here let's delimiter and simply delimiter, put semicolon, then I will go into this logical body, let's say select count here, count all users from users table, and here let's say as total count. So this is the another stored processor I'm creating without out parameter mode. But here also we are counting all the users from users table, and this is only an alias name. So here putting all these things, click on go button, and successfully here we have one more stored processor. Click on routines, click here on this, let's say count all users, click on execute. And now we can see that if we compare this stored processor, so we can see total count equals to 3 and total count equals to 3. Next after this, now here we have a genuine confusion that if we have the same data returned by this stored processor, if they are same, then why we have taken an extra parameter, that is out parameter mode, inside this stored processor. So to clear this confusion, what I will do, I will go and let's say that I want to add 100 number with this total count, that is final result of this stored processor, or the 100 number addition with this total count of this stored processor. It means that I want an addition operation of this total count of this stored processor with 100 number. So I will go first with this stored processor. So let's open SQL tab. I'll go here. So I will use one more concept, that is MySQL variables. So set is the keyword. Let's say that total count. So at the rate total count, initially it will be 0. Let's say set, let's say add to number equals to 100, and here I will call the stored processor. So call statement, here is the stored processor. So let's copy, and inside this stored processor we have to pass a parameter. So let's pass this total count, and remember this variable automatically will be converted into out parameter mode because this is a stored procedure which is taking an parameter which is of out parameter mode. So here, once we execute this stored procedure, the value, the total count that is equals to 3 automatically will be stored inside this variable. Now here, let's say set at the rate total addition equals to here the total number what we have, that is add to number called 100 plus, and here we have the total count. Initially it will be 0, but after calling this store processor automatically it will be called 3. Now put a semicolon, so here select, and finally if we select, let's say total addition, put a semicolon. Now if we click on this go button, and now we can see that at finally what we have the data called 103, and it is because initially the add to number is 100, but once we have called this stored processor, it has returned the 3 value, and in addition that is 3 and 100, it has given call 103. But if we like apply the same situation with this stored processor, it is not going to do anything. Let's try here. So let's open SQL tab. Here let's say set the same variables, let's say total count equals to 0. Here, let's say set add to number equals to 100. Now here, let's say call stored procedure. So call a statement, call all users, copy and paste. Now this time, it is not going to return anything because it is not going to accept any out parameter mode. So here, if we try to add, let's say set total addition equals to, let's add to number, and here total count plus here. Now here let's say select total additional, put a semicolon, and if I click on go button, and now we can see that in return we are getting only the 3 value. So this is the major difference, that here it has returned the same data, but the return data is output parameter, which is obviously we can use inside any of the additional operation. Science video topic will discuss again a very interesting concept, and that is about in-out parameter mode. Inside last two videos, we had discussed the concept of in parameter mode and out parameter mode. Now in this video, we'll discuss our third parameter mode, that is in out. Let's go back to editor. So far we understood that by using in parameter mode, it means that we have to pass a parameter inside a stored procedure which we can use inside for manipulations. Now, in terms of out parameter mode, it means what the data basically a stored processor will return, those data will be stored inside out parameter mode. Now, the name itself clears. In out parameter mode simply means that what the parameter we are passing inside our stored processor, that parameter will be responsible to handle the functions of in parameter mode and out parameter mode. Additionally, also we can say that what the parameter we are passing inside stored processor, if it is in out parameter mode, so it simply means that that variable also we can use inside operations, inside manipulations, what basically we do inside begin and end block. And finally, what the data we want to return from a stored processor, that data we can store into the same variable if it is in out parameter mode. So here inside this video we'll create a stored processor, and inside that stored processor we'll pass a variable, we'll pass a parameter which is a type of in out parameter mode. Now here what we can do, let's go back to our database first. Let's go to SQL tab. So I will create a stored processor. That stored processor will accept parameter which will be in out parameter mode, and what basically it will do, it will go and increment like that variable what will pass by +1. So here let's say delimiter dollar sign, then here let's say create processor, and let's say increment my number by +1, and here let's pass our variable, so it will be in out parameter mode, and here let's say number, and it will be type of int. Then I will go here, let's say begin, and here dollar and delimiter. Now in between this begin and end, what I will do, let's say set. This is a variable called number, and here let's say number plus 1. Like as we know that in out parameter mode supports the in behavior as well as out behavior. So in terms of in behavior, it means it also contains a number which we can use for manipulations. So here it will be something 1 plus 1, and the two result will be stored inside this number, which can be used as out parameter mode. So simply let's go click on this go button, and successfully our stored procedure now created. If I copy the stored procedure name, or it's better, let's go inside this routines tab. Now here we have the stored procedure, so just copy. Let's open the SQL tab, and here let's say set counter is equals to 1. The initial value of counter is equals to 1. Let's call our stored procedure, and if I pass, let's say counter here. Now here, once we pass this variable as a parameter to this stored procedure, this parameter automatically now or in out parameter mode. So automatically, as we know that this variable has an initial value equals to 1. Now this stored procedure will go and add plus 1 to this number. Now this stored procedure will return that is equals to 2, and that 2 number will be inside this counter variable because this is also a out parameter mode. So here let's put a semicolon. So select, and if I print, let's say counter semicolon. So here we have the initial value equals to 1. This stored procedure will add plus 1 and return this counter variable, and if we print, it will go and print the number 2, as we can see equals to counter. So this is the use of in out parameter mode. Now here let's consider one more scenario. So I will go into the SQL tab. Let's say delimiter dollar, let's say create processor, and here let's say add these numbers, and inside this I will take two parameters. First I'll use in parameter mode, let's say number, and here let's say number add 2. This is equals to integer type, and here let's say in out parameter mode, and here let's call it as total, which is of int type. Then after this, let's say begin and end block dollar, let's say delimiter and semicolon. Now let's go inside this begin and end block. So here let's say set total, which is in out parameter mode, equals to total plus, and this is in parameter mode. So simply we are creating a stored procedure, which is stored procedure takes two parameter. The first parameter will be integer type, and this is in parameter mode. It means this variable we can use only for calculations, only for manipulations, but inside the second parameter also we can return the data of this stored procedure. Now here, if I go and click on this go button, so successful. Now here we have one more stored procedure. Let's copy, open this SQL tab into new tab. So here let's say set counter is equals to 1. So whenever I will call this stored procedure, and in this stored procedure, if I pass for example 10 here and counter, so it simply means that this variable will go here inside this total, like inside this total. So it will be something counter is equals to counter plus the number 2, and number 2 equals to 10. It means that this stored procedure will go and return that is 10 plus 1 equals to 11, and the 11 number will be stored inside this counter variable. So here let's say select, and here if I type let's say counter, let's say as total count semicolon. So if I go click on go button, and now we can see that total count is equals to 11. Now friends, I hope that by the help of this video, by the help of two examples, now we have the idea of in-out parameter mode. In this video topic, again we'll discuss a very amazing concept of MySQL Stored Procedure, and that is how to use conditional statement blocks like if else if done conditional statement block inside stored procedure. Once we get this concept, so by using this concept we can add multiple checkpoints inside a stored procedure. So to understand this concept, let's go back to browser. So first thing first, I will go into this database what we had created. Let's click on this users table, go to structure. Now in these columns, I will add one more column. So add +1 like one column after phone number and the column name something called civil score. Let's say civil underscore score. It is a type of integer, and let's say 5 here. It will also accept null value. Let's click on save button. Now successfully inside this users table we have one more column added called civil score. Let's click on browse. So I will go then for this first user. Let's say 900 something a civil score value. Here let's say 650, and here let's say 840. Now next after this, here we have to create a stored procedure. Inside that stored procedure we have to pass an user id. So automatically after getting user id, it will get the civil score of that user, and in return it will decide that that user civil score is excellent, is an average value, or a poor value. So let's create a stored procedure. So I will go and open this SQL tab into a new tab, and here we have to follow the same pattern of code called delimiter dollar. Then here let's say create procedure. Let's say get civil score data, and here we have in parameter mode, let's say user id, and it will be type of int. Then here let's say begin and block dollar delimiter and semicolon. Then I will go into this begin and end block, and I will use a variable concept inside the store procedure. So let's say declare variable will be something called, let's say, civil data, and it is type of varchar, let's say 20 characters, and the default value I want should be, let's say, not available. And here let's say length equals to something 35 characters. Now this is like the way to create or store processor variable. Something here declare is a keyword, then variable name, its type, and the default value. Then after that, what we have to do, let's say select all from, or instead of all, I want to get only the civil score value. So select civil score from the table called users, where the id equals to, and what the id are getting inside this in parameter mode variable. So here what we can do, I'll use the conditional statement, that is if else if then block. So here let's say if. Now next here we have civil score, and one more thing, I want to get this data on the base of this user ID, but also I want to store this data like this value into this civil data variable. So here, let's say into civil data, or let's create one more variable here. Let's say declare, let's say civil score value type of int default value equals to 0. Now here I'll store this civil score into this variable. Then after this, let's say if civil score value, if it is less than 500, then like civil data, let's copy set civil data is equals to, let's say, poor value. Then here, if I want to put more than one condition, so we can do by using else if here. So if civil score value, let's say greater than 500, but and here, so let's say and civil score, if it is less than, let's say 800, so let's add, let's say very poor value. then keyword, and here let's say set civil data is equals to, let's say, poor value. Here again let's put else if. I will go and copy this whole condition, or simply let's say civil score value if it is greater than 800, and let's say and here if it is less than 900, it means that then here let's say set civil data civil data is equals to, let's say, average value, and here let's say else if civil score value if it is greater than 900, it means that then here let's say set civil data civil data is equals to, and here we have great value, or excellent, we may say excellent value. Now here if suppose we don't have any condition match, so in that case let's say set civil data is equals to no value found. And finally here let's say end if. So successfully, now here we can see that here we have the multiple checkpoints on the basis of this score value what we get from this user ID. So what basically we are doing inside the store processor, and let's create one more variable here, that is out, and here I will call it as, let's say, civil score label, and it is type of varchar, and let's say here 35 characters. So here we have created a store processor. Inside this store processor, we are passing two parameters, that is in parameter mode and out parameter mode. So it means that this is going to store like user ID. On the basis of this user ID, we get the user data like civil score value, and this is we passed like to get the output data of this stored processor. Then after that here we have created two like stored processor variables called civil data, which is type of varchar, and a civil score value, which is a type of int. Then here on the basis of condition like our in parameter mode like user ID, here we got the user data like civil score value, and on the basis of that score value here we have the multiple checkpoints like if less than 500, if the value lie between 500 and 800, if the value between like 800 and 900, and if the value more than 900, so what will be the civil data value. Now once we do all these things, so what we can do here, so instead of this civil data, we don't want this now, because here we have the out variable. So let's copy and put here put here. Now in this case, if I go and click on this go button, or before that let's copy the whole code of this store processor. Let's go here, open a new tab and pasting it here. Now what we can do, if I go click on go button, so store processor created. Let's copy this store processor name, open this SQL tab. Now here if I go, let's say call store processor, and in this store processor if I pass for example let's say second value to here, and as we know that the civil score value is 650, which basically comes under the second condition, and the value we want something called the poor value. Let's see in return that what basically it is behaving. So if I go semicolon control enter, or simply click on go button, and here we have some error and okay, because we need to pass two parameters mode like in parameter mode it is, and here out parameter mode, so something let's say civil or user data value, or let's say that set civil data value. Initially it is blank, so let's copy, go here and pass here, so select, and here it is. Now if I go click on go button, And now we can see that the poor value. Now let's pass one more time here. So if I go click on this edit inline, not here, click on this SQL tab. Let's say set civil data score initially. Let's say empty value, call the store processor. Now this time I will pass this one user ID. Let's copy this variable, pass it here so that we can store the score value, and finally let's select as, let's say, score value. If I copy the whole code, let's click on go button, and now we can see that no value found. And why it is happening? Here we have 900. So let's go inside our database, click on routines, click on this edit link, and if I go into this logical body, so okay, actually here we have the 900. So it's better. What we can do, let's say greater than equal to. So in that case, it will return this accident value. Click on this go button. Again, if I go here, click on this SQL tab, paste all those code. Now here, let's click on this go button, and now we can see that excellent value. So here we had seen that how to create a store processor, and inside that store processor how to implement multiple conditions so that we have multiple checkpoints to check a specific value. So successfully, now here we have completed one more logical concept inside this MySQL Stored Procedure course, and that is how to use if-else-if then conditional statement block. In this video topic, again we'll discuss a very amazing concept of MySQL Stored Procedure, and that is how to implement cases statement inside Stored Procedure. Inside last video, successfully we have completed that how to use if-else-if then conditional statement block. Now in this case, in this video, also we'll consider the same scenarios, same concept of a stored processor, but in this case we'll use the concept of cases statement. Let's go back to editor. So inside last video, remember we had created a store processor called getCivilScoreData. Inside that store processor, we have used two parameters with different types of parameter mode, like in parameter mode and out parameter mode. So by using in parameter mode, we retrieved the civil score value of that user, and on the basis of that score value, by using the conditional statement of if else if then block, we have like on the basis of score value, here we have the multiple labels like very poor value, average value, excellent value, and no value found. Now in this video, we'll create same type of a stored processor. By the help of that, we can calculate the civil score data, but this time we'll implement the concept of cases statement. So here now next after this, before creating our stored processor, if I talk about the syntax to use case statement, it's very simple. First I will talk about our if else if. So here we have call if, then here we have the condition, then here we have the then block. What we can see for this first statement like if, then condition, then here we have then again inside this second case, like here we have the statement, then here we have else if, then here we have condition, then here we have then, and again here we have the statement. So it will return on the basis of conditions, and finally here we have our else statement, and here statement, and finally here we have our end if. Now this is to use if conditional statement block. Now if I talk about our switch cases, so here it will be case. Case is a keyword. Then here we have end case, like in the same way like if and if. So here we have case, end case, and in between, let's say when, here we have condition, then here we have the statement. Again here we have when, then here we have condition, then here we have the statement, and so on. It repeats like whatever we have the conditions. So this is the syntax to use case statements. Now let's get started. So I will go into my database. So here we have users table. We can see that inside this users table, here we have the civil score column, which is containing some score value, like for this first user 900, second user 650, third user 840. Now here we have to create a stored procedure. So whenever if I pass the user ID and a variable to get output of the score data, so automatically that stored procedure will return that it is excellent score, a poor score, or an average score. So let's open the SQL tab into new tab. So here the same pattern of code. Let's say delimiter dollar. Then here let's say create procedure. Let's say get user civil data value, and here we have in parameter mode. So in, let's say user ID, it is type of int here. Now here again we have the second, that is I'll use as out parameter mode. So let's say out here. Now here let's say score value, and it is a type of varchar. So varchar, let's say 35 characters. Now here, and it is not int, it is only in. Then here I will go, let's use begin keyword and keyword dollar delimiter and semicolon. Then I will go into this begin and end block. So first I will go and declare a variable here. So declare, let's say score data or score number. Score number, it is type of int and default value equals to 0. Now next after this, let's select score value. Score value, if I see the column name, so here we have, okay, civil score. Let's say civil score from the table name called users, where id equals to our the variable what we have taken called user id, and this score value I want to store into this variable. So let's say into this variable. Now on the basis of this value, now we have to use switch case statements. So let's copy. So here let's say case and case semicolon. Then I will go into this block called case and case. So here let's say when keyword. So when score number is, let's say, less than 500. So then after this here we have to put our statement. So in this case, let's say set, or here let's say set or use out parameter variable called score value. Let's say score value equals to, let's say, very poor score. Now here let's create our second condition. So when score number let's say greater than 500 and score number less than, let's say, 700. So then in that case the statement will be something called set score value. Let's copy this out variable. So score value equals to, let's say, very poor, or we may say, let's say, average value, and here let's say very poor score. Now let's create our third condition. So here let's say when score number, let's say, greater than 700 or equals to 700, but it is less than, let's say, score number less than 800. So in that case, then let's say set score value equals to, let's say, good value. Now here let's create our final condition. So when score number greater than equal to 900, so in that case then, and here if I copy this line of code, let's paste So here we have to say, let's say, excellent score. Otherwise, we have a callback condition in that case. If suppose any condition does not match, so in that case, here we have also the else block, and here we have a statement. Let's say set. Let's copy this score value, put here, and let's say score not found. Now successfully, this is our all the logical body condition of this store procedure. So if I copy, go here, open a new tab. Now you can see that here we have user ID. So on the base of user ID, we have selected the civil score of that user stored into this variable. And here we have multiple cases on the base of this number. So if the value less than 500, this is the value. If it is greater than 500, less than 700, this is the value. This is the value. And here we have the value and the value. Now let's go and execute this. So if I go, click on this go button. So here we have some error that is at line number 7, and here let's say create procedure. If I go and let's say format here, so out variable, so this is create procedure, then here we have begin, then end block. I think we misses something. Now here I found one mistake, that is select civil score not int. It is equals to int2 because we are assigning this value to this variable. So instead of int we have to use int2 keyword. Now I think everything is okay now. Okay, here we have a scope, so it is a score value. Let's copy. I think that this is also a mistake. Paste here, score value, score value. Now I think it seems okay all now. Click on this go button. So successfully now stored procedures are created. So let's copy, go into the SQL tab. So here let's say set user ID equals to, now in this case, let's say for example for the second user, so to here, let's say set score value, initially it is empty, let's say call store procedure, and in this case I will pass first the user ID like to here, and second our score value, let's say select, and here the score value. Let's copy. Now here if I click on this go button, and now we can see that on the basis of second number user like 650, it returned the average score. And now we can see that the value 650 in between 500 and 700. Now it is perfectly working. Now let's test one more case here. So if I go click on the SQL tab, paste all the code. So if I pass, let's say one number user ID, let's go click on this go button. So on the basis of 900 value, it has returned excellent value. Now in this case, we can see that here we have used the switch cases like the case statement blocks, and we have implemented the same logical concept of if else if then conditional statement what we had seen inside last video. So successful. Now here we have completed one more conditional checkpoint, and that is by using case statement. In this video topic, we'll discuss the concept of MySQL loop statement. As we know that inside last two videos, we had discussed all about the concept of MySQL conditional statement block, that is how to use if-else if statement block as well as MySQL cases. Now let's say that at some situation we have a set of data and I want to iterate, I want to loop through over those data inside MySQL. What are the options available? So here inside this video we'll discuss all about the first method so that you can iterate over those data set by using loop and leave statement. Let's go back to editor. So here, let me tell you that we have multiple options inside MySQL available. By the help of that, we can easily iterate over our data set. So here, we'll discuss the concept of loop and leave statement. But apart from that, we have repeat statement Now, next after this, I'll use the concept of while statement, and then after while statement, I'll use the final concept of this course that is called cursors. So here we can see that here we have the multiple options available inside MySQL, what basically we can use to iterate over a dataset. So inside this video topic, we'll discuss the first concept, and that is how to iterate over data by using loop and leave statement. So to understand this concept, let's say that we have a range of numbers, for example 1 to 10. Now the task is to print the values like 1, 2, 3, so on up to 10. So the basic task is that how to print the values from 1 to 10 by using loop and leave statement. So let's go to browser, go inside any of the database. So first I will create a very basic stored procedure. So the syntax will be very clear because almost inside each video topic of this course we have followed the same pattern, that how to create a stored procedure. So simply delimiter dollar sign, then here let's say create procedure statement. So print numbers by using loop statement, and here begin keyword, then and keyword dollar sign, and here let's say delimiter and semicolon. Then I will go into this logical body concept, that is begin and end block. And here, so what is this task? Task is to print the values from 1 to 10. So here we have to take two variables, that is counter, it means a counter variable which is going to increment itself like 1, 2, 3 up to 10, and second a variable which is going to contain our string values. So string values may be something like this, 1 comma 2, 3 comma 4, something up to 10 here. Now let's go back to our database. So here let's say declare, first I will create two variables here, declare let's say counter I, and it is type of int, and here the default value equals to 1. Now let's create one more variable that is called declare, and it will be something, let's say numbers string. It is a type of varchar, let's say maybe 40 or 50 characters in length, and the default value equals to empty. Now here we have to use the concept of loop and leave statement to print the numbers from 1 to 10. So the syntax is, first we have to provide a loop name. So for example, I want to give the loop name as my loop. Then after that we have to provide loop as a keyword. So once we started this loop, simply we have to end here. So end loop, loop is a keyword, and the loop name called my loop, semicolon. Then we have to go inside this my loop. So as we know that we have to concatenate each numbers like 1, 2, 3, so on up to 10 of this range value. So inside this case, let's say set, we have taken a variable to concatenate, that is number strings. So number strings, then we have to use a function of MySQL that is called concat. Put here number string. So we have to go and increment this value, that is default value 1. Also we have to increment called 2, 3 and so on up to 10. So let's copy, put here, and each number I want to separate using comma. So we have to pass this comma operator as a third argument value inside this concat function. Now here simply we have concatenated. Then here I will use if condition. So if like counter I greater than 10, so in that case simply let's first and if. Now inside this simply we have to leave the loop, so leave my loop. Now here we have the condition, so it is checking if number increases and go after 10. So inside that case we have to simply break our loop here, and here let's say set, let's say counter I equals to counter I plus 1. So we can see that simply here we have concatenated our string value. Also we have checked our condition if it is go after 10. So in that case it is simply leaving that loop, and if the numbers like 1, 2, 3, so inside that case it is simply incrementing the value of this counter I. Now successfully here we have the complete logic that how to use by using loop and leave statement to print the values from 1 to 10. So now next what we can do, simply I will go here, click on this go button. Now successfully as we can see that our stored procedure now created, which basically prints the number from 1 to 10 value. So what we can do, let's copy this stored processor name. Then I will open this SQL tab, open a new tab. Let's go inside this and by using this call statement, let's call this stored processor semicolon. Then I will go and click on this go button and okay, it has not returned anything. So what we can do, let's go inside this routines tab, click on this edit link and I think that in result, this is the variable which stores all the numbers. So simply let's copy this numbers string, go here. So by using select statement, simply return that. So let's go click on this go button, stored processor updated. Now if I go, let's copy first, go inside the SQL tab and here by using again call statement, click on this go button. Now successfully as we can see that here we have the numbers string that is from 1 to 11. But the thing is that I want only 1 to 10. So where is the mistake? Let's open this routines tab into a new tab. Again I will go and click on this edit link and I think that actually here if I scroll down this print value or means our concatenation will be after this if condition. Let's click on this go button, updated. Now again if I go click on this edit inline, click on this go button and now we can see that here we have the numbers string that is from 1 to 10 value. So here inside this video topic, now we have the clear idea that how to use loop and leave statement to go and iterate over any data set. Inside this video topic, we'll discuss the concept of MySQL while loop statement. Inside last video, we had discussed the concept that how to use loop and leave statement. So with the same example, here I'll discuss that how to print values from 1 to 10, but in this case we'll discuss our second method. By the help of that, we can easily iterate over dataset. Let's go to editor. So inside last video, we had discussed that we have these options to iterate over dataset by using loop and leave statement, repeat statement, while statement, and cursors. Now at this time, here we have the concept that how to use loop and leave statement, but in this video topic, we'll add one more concept to iterate over dataset by using our while statement. So to get this concept, we'll go with the same example like how to print values from 1 to 10, but this time we'll use the concept of while statement. Let's go back to browser. Then I will go into any of the database, click on this SQL tab. So here, let's say delimiter, dollar. Then I will go use create processor statement. So create processor, let's say that print numbers by while loop statement. Then here I will use begin and end block. So begin and block dollar delimiter and semicolon. Then we have to go inside this logical body called begin and end. So as we know that simply we have to print the values from 1 to 10. So I will take two variables. Let's say declare. Let's say counter I, any variable which is of int type, and the default value, let's say equals to 1. Now the second variable which is going to store our string values like the concatenated string values, let's say declare something called numbers string, let's say varchar, and here 50 characters in length, let's say default value is equals to an empty character. Now here we have to use the concept of while statement. So while is the keyword. After while we have to put condition. So let's say counter I if it is less than 11 or we may say less than equals to 10. So in that case we have to use one more keyword called do here. So and while, then we have to go inside this block called while and while, and in this case simply let's say set keyword numbers string. Let's copy this variable numbers string equals to concat or MySQL function. I want to concatenate like the existing value with the counter I. So let's copy this variable, put inside second argument. So we want to separate each number by using like comma operator. So in that case, let's say numbers string counter I, and here we have to pass comma as a third argument value of this concat function. Now here, let's say set also we have to increment our variable. So counter I equals to counter I plus 1 semicolon. And finally, let's copy this numbers string. Let's say select the statement, numbers string, and let's say numbers string. Now save all these changes. Simply, we have completed the entire logic. Now let's go here, click on this go button. And here we have some error, that is, if I go and while, okay, let's put semicolon, it was missing. Click on this go button. Now successfully created. Let's copy this stored procedure name. Then I will go open SQL tab into new tab. So I will use call statement, and here our stored procedure name. Simply, if I click on this go button, and now we can see that here we have our data result, which is from 1 to 10. So successfully inside this MySQL Stored Procedure course, now here we have one more idea of loop, and that is how to use MySQL while loop statement. Now let's say that I want to also integrate the concept of in parameter and out parameter. So let's go and open this SQL tab into new tab. I'll create one more stored procedure, and inside that stored procedure, our task will be something. If I pass a number, let's say 10 and 20, and also I want to pass one more variable, something called result. So inside result variable, I want data something 10, 11, 12 up to 20. So here we have the initial value. I want to control the initial value, like the final value, and also the result data. In this case, we can see that whenever if I call this stored procedure, it always returns numbers from 1 to 10. But I want to control the value, that is initial value and the last value. Let's go here. So delimiter dollar, then here let's say create procedure. Let's say print numbers by using while loop statement. I will pass to here parenthesis, and inside this I will pass our parameters and their mode. So first let's call it as initial, or the parameter mode call in. Then let's say initial param, it will be type of int. Now the second, let's say it will be in parameter mode, let's say final param, it is also type int, and here out param, and let's say result data, and it will be varchar, and I will pass, let's say, 60 characters in length. So successfully, now this is our stored procedure name. Here we have the first value, first parameter, which is of in parameter mode. Second parameter, it is also in parameter mode, and third here we have called out parameter mode. Now simply let's go use begin and end block dollar, and then here delimiter and semicolon. Then I will go into this begin and end block. So let's say declare initial param, or simply let's say counter I int type, and the default value equals to initial param. Now here this line simply means that by taking this initial parameter, actually we are initializing a variable called counter I. So inside while loop statement, we have to go and increment this variable by +1. So here let's go and use while statement. Then we have to put conditions. So counter I, we want to print the final value as well. So less than equals to final parameter. Then we have to use do keyword, and here let's say and while. Just we have to go in between while and while. So simply set keyword. Let's copy this result data. Result data equals to concat result data. We have to pass counter I, and then I want to separate each number with comma, and finally we have to implement this loop variable. So simply let's just set counter I equals to counter I plus 1. Now here, then after that, simply let's copy this result data, and let's say here select result data. Now all the concept completed. So what next? Then I will go and click on this go button. Stored procedure created. Let's copy, open SQL tab. Let's say by using call statement, I will pass. Then here we have to pass the initial value, let's say 20, final value, let's say 30, and I want data into this result variable. So here, let's result, pass semicolon, just press Ctrl Enter or click on this Go button. And here we can see that it has returned the null value. So simply let's open Routines tab. Let's go click on this Edit link. Now here, if I check the logical body of this stored processor, so all the issues with this result data, and this is, we can see that this is out parameter mode. So what we can do to fix this issue, let's say declare, I'll create a temporary variable called temp result, let's say, which is type of varchar 50 characters in length, default value will be an empty character. Now let's copy this temp result. Let's concatenate all these values inside this temp result, and finally here let's say set result data, which is type of out parameter mode, equals to, and let's copy, let's say, temp result. Now what basically we did, simply this is our local variable of this stored processor. We stored all those concatenated string value into this variable, and finally into our output parameter mode, these all data, this complete string we have stored into this out parameter mode. Let's click on this Go button, changes saved. Let's go and open SQL tab, and here let's say set data is an empty value. Now let's call our stored processor. So call here, copy this, put here, initial value is 50. Let's say 55 will be the final value, and I want to store that data into this data variable. And here let's say select keyword and data. So if I go click on this Go button, and now we can see that here we have the data or our result called 50, 51 up to 55. Now it's really amazing that we have created our own stored processor, which basically takes the initial parameter and the final value, and automatically while calling it resolves all those data, all those numbers from the initial value and the final value. Now successfully, here we have the complete concept that how to use while loop statement inside MySQL Stored Procedure. Now since with the topic, again we'll discuss a very amazing concept of MySQL, and that is how to use MySQL repeat loop statement. Inside last two videos, we have seen the concept that how to use loop and leave statement. Additionally, we have discussed that how to use MySQL while loop statement. Now in this video, we'll discuss the amazing concept of repeat loop statement. Let's go back to editor. So as we know that if we have a data set inside MySQL, and if I want to iterate over those data set, we have multiple options. So we have seen already, we have discussed inside last two videos by using loop and leave statement and while loop statement. Now in this video, we'll discuss the concept of repeat statement. So the task will be same. We have to create a stored processor, and that stored processor is going to simply print the values from 1 to 10. Now this time, to get this data, we have to use the concept of repeat statement. Let's go back to browser. Then I'll go into the SQL tab, and here let's say delimiter dollar, let's say create processor statement, and here let's say print numbers by, and this time we have to use call repeat statement. And here let's get the initial value. So here I want to use in parameter mode, let's say initial value, which is a type of int. Let's here again we have the in parameter mode, let's say file value, and it is also int type, and I want to store data into output parameter mode. So out here let's say result data, and it is a type of varchar. So here we'll have a stored processor. Inside this stored processor, simply we have to pass the initial value and the final value, and what the numbers lie between these two numbers, simply we have to print those values. Now next, let's say begin keyword and keyword dollar, then delimiter and semicolon. Then we have to go inside this begin and end. Now let's use the first called declare, and here let's say counter I, it is a type of int, and the default value equals to the initial value what you're passing inside this stored processor. And here, let's say declare to store our temporary result. So temp result, it is a type of varchar. So let's say varchar 50 characters in length, and the default value will be an empty character. Now next, here we have to use the concept of repeat statement. So simply, let's say repeat keyword, then here let's and repeat. And now next, let's go inside this repeat and repeat. Let's use set keyword, temp result equals to concat. Then here temp result, I will concatenate with this counter I, and each number will be separated using this comma. So here, what basically we want inside our data set, inside our output, I want, for example, if I pass inside a stored procedure, for example, 100, 110, and I want to store all those data inside this data variable. So the data variable will be equals to 100, 101, 102, 103, so on up to 110. So this is the output data, what basically we expect from this stored processor. Now here, let's say set, let's increment the counter variable. So counter I plus 1. And here we have to repeat our data until is a keyword, until like counter I greater than, let's say, 10. It means that we have to repeat this loop until and unless the value of count I will become greater than 10. So simply put a semicolon. Let's copy this temp result, go after this and repeat. Let's say set. Our output data will be stored inside this result data. So I will copy result data. Let's copy this temp result and simply put it here. Pass semicolon. Then I will go click on this go button, and here we have some error, that is if I go and here let's remove this semicolon because repeat and until counter I. Now in this line of code we don't need to pass semicolon, so everything is now good. Let's go click on this go button, store processor created. Let's copy this store processor, then I'll open this SQL tab. Now here I'll use call statement, and before calling this stored processor, let's say data equals to empty string. Let's say set data equals to empty string. So I want to pass the initial value as 100, final value let's say 110, and I want to store the value our data inside this data variable. And finally let's select, here we have the data variable. So after putting all these three lines, now let's go and click on this go button. And here actually we are getting only one data, that is 100. And why basically it is, again if I go, let's open routines tab into a new tab, and if I go, let's click on this edit link. Now here simply I'll go and check the logical body what basically we have written. So it has printed only this 100 data. Okay, actually here we have the mistake because here we have the final value as the static value, but as we know that this is also controlled by this final value. Now let's copy, put here, and let's go click on this go button. So successfully now updated. So again if I go, let's go and open this SQL tab one more time. Let's just set data equals to empty string. Now let's use call statement. Then I will copy our stored processor name, put here. Now this time I will pass, let's say 500 will be the initial value, 510 will be the final value, or even let's say 520. And here I want to store data into this data variable. So select, let's say data as, let's call it as output data. Now let's copy all these lines of code, click on this go button, And here, now we can see that our output data is equals to 500, 501, 502. So it's really amazing what the numbers we have passed inside our stored processor. Now it has printed all those numbers. But we can see that here we have one more issue, as the numbers that what we have passed is 520 as the final number. But inside this output data, we are getting only 511 and 51. So it means that this data is incomplete. So why basically it is happening, and this is because let's go inside a stored processor, click on this edit link. Now if I go into this output parameter mode, as we can see the total length equals to 50 characters. So simply we have to increase this value, so 115 length, and here also inside this temporary data, let's say 115 length. Click on this go button. Let's again go here, click on this SQL tab, put all lines of code, and simply click on this go button. And now this time we can see that again we are getting the same data like incomplete, but here we have three dots. So what we can do, click on this extra options, click on this full text, click on this go button. Now here we have the null value, but again if I go into the SQL tab, put all those lines of code, click on this go button, and now we can see that this time overall data what basically we have passed as the initial value and the final value, now we have the complete values. So Saksana, this is our third concept, that how to iterate over data by using MySQL repeat loop statement. So successfully now overall we have the idea that how to use loop and leave statement, MySQL while loop statement, and MySQL repeat loop statement. Now in the next video, we'll discuss one more amazing concept, that is how to use cursors. In this video topic, we'll discuss a very amazing and informative topic of MySQL, and that is MySQL cursors. So what basically a cursor is, why we use inside MySQL, and what is the purpose to use it inside MySQL queries. All these things we'll discuss inside this complete video. Let's go back to editor. So as we know that if we want to iterate over dataset of MySQL, we have multiple options. We had seen inside last three videos that either we can use loop and leave statement, either we can use while loop statement, and also we can use repeat loop statement. Now this time we'll discuss the most amazing topic of this course, and that is MySQL cursors. So here, to understand the concept of MySQL cursors, let's assume that inside our database we have a table called users. Inside that table we have some number of columns like ID, name, email, and designation. And also we are trying to execute a query, and query will be like select all from table name called users. Now as we know that by the help of this query we list, we get all those users what we will have inside this users table. Now let's say that inside MySQL I want to iterate over data, I want to iterate over result, what basically we get from this query. So if we want to get a row by row data from this users table, now we have to use a concept called MySQL cursors. So MySQL cursors is just like a database object. By the help of that object, we can keep our pointer inside every value inside each row of any respective table. So here, if suppose that this query is going to return a result, for example, of 4 rows. Now I want to iterate over each row of this result, so simply we have to create a MySQL cursor, and that cursor will help to go with each row by row value of this data set. So here, inside this video topic, what basically we'll do, we'll create a stored procedure. Inside that stored procedure, we'll have a very simplest query, that is selecting the email value of all those users. Now after getting all those emails of all users from users table, simply inside that same stored procedure, I'll create a cursor. Now by using MySQL cursor, I will iterate over each email of each user of users table, and then we have to store all those emails into a single variable, and in return from a stored procedure, simply we have to return that. Now in this video topic, by the help of this example, we'll completely understand that what is a cursor and why we use inside MySQL. Let's go back to our database. So here we can see that inside this database we have a table called users. Let's open it. And now we can see that inside this users table, we have 4 entries and each user have their email addresses. Now let's create a stored procedure. So simply I will open the SQL tab into new tab, and here let's say delimiter. Then here let's say create procedure, get emails, or simply I will call it as get user emails by cursor. And here let's pass a out parameter mode variable so that in return all the emails what basically will read, all those emails should be returned from this stored procedure. So here out parameter mode, and let's say user underscore emails, and it is a type of varchar. Now let's say 220 characters in length. Now here let's say begin keyword and keyword dollar, then delimiter, and here semicolon. Now next after this inside this stored processor, I'll create some basic variables. So here let's say declare single user email. Single user email, it is a type of varchar, and let's say 50 characters in length, and the default value of this variable will be an empty value. One more variable we want called declare reading status, and it is a type of boolean value, so the default value of this variable will be equals to false. Now the question is, what is the use of these basic variables? So as we know that here we have the users table, and we want to read each value of this email addresses, and I want to return from this stored procedure. Now here the first task is to get all these emails from using a MySQL query. Then after that we have to use the concept of MySQL cursors. So whenever if we create cursor to read each value, so each email address of each user will be stored temporarily inside this single user email variable. And here the second variable indicates that whenever the reading process will starts from this first email to last email, so at least we want a variable so that it will keep track of the reading status of cursor. So once the reading process will be completed, so in that case, the reading status, this variable will be equals to true. Now after these two basic variables, let's create our cursor. So declare, then we have to put the cursor name. So in this case, as you know that we have to read the email value of each user. So here, let's say user email cursor. Then after that, we have to put cursor as a keyword. So cursor, and this cursor we are creating to read. So for keyword, then here we'll have our MySQL query. So select email from users table. Now, as we can see that this is a MySQL query which basically returns all the email values from this users table. So once it will return this result, so automatically by the help of this cursor, what we are creating, we can go row by row. It means value by value to read each email of each user. Now next after this, let's create one more variable called declare continue handler. And for example, if we have no data, so declare continue handler for keyword not found. So in that case, this boolean value reading status, let's say set keyword reading status is equals to true. Now here, this line simply means that whenever if this query returns no data, so in that case automatically the reading status will be equals to true. Now next after this, here let's copy this output parameter mode variable. So users email, so set users email. First it will be initialized with an empty value. Now let's open our cursor to read each email value. So here we have the cursor name, so I will copy that simply with open keyword cursor name, semicolon, and finally here, let's close, and then here our cursor name. Now in between this open and close, basically we have to read each email value of each user. Now let's go here inside this block. Now I will use the concept of loop and leave statement, what basically we had seen inside last video. So here what I will do simply, let's say my email loop colon loop keyword, and lastly here let's end loop keyword, and here my email loop. Now once we go inside this loop, simply I will go here. So here inside this loop, we have to use the concept of fetch keyword because as we know that here we have our cursor and this cursor is basically to read all those emails what we have selected from users table. So here we have opened our cursor. Inside this cursor, here we have our loop and then inside this loop I will use the concept of fetch keyword. Then we have to put our cursor which stores like single email value of each user. So this will be the first email. So I will get that value and I will store that value into this single user email variable. Now here, let's put if conditions. So if, now here reading status, if it is equals to true, so in that case, and if first, so in that case, simply I will leave from that loop. So leave my email loop. Otherwise, we have to go here. Let's say set. Then I will go and copy this user's email. Copy, put it here equals to concat. And here, this is our user's email. Then I will concatenate this single user email. And let's say that I want to concatenate each user email with semicolon. So just put it here and put semicolon here. Now successfully, the logical concept of this stored procedure now completed. Now let's summarize one more time. So by the help of this code, actually we are creating a stored procedure which simply lists all those emails of all users from users table. So if I go here, now you can see that by the help of this MySQL query, simply first at the first initial position, we are reading all email value of all users. Then after that, by using the concept of cursor, simply we are reading each value of each user and storing into a variable of this stored procedure. And then after that, each email like value of value, after reading, we are simply concatenating those values inside our output parameter mode variable. Now this is the whole concept that how to use MySQL cursor. Now after this, let's go click on this go button. And now successfully as we can see that stored procedure now created. So simply I will copy this stored procedure name. Let's open this SQL tab into new tab and here let's say set data equals to will be an empty value and then here let's say call stored procedure name. I will pass data because at the end all those emails will be stored inside this data variable because keep in mind that this is output parameter mode variable and here let's say select data as let's say user emails. Let's copy all these three lines of code. Simply I'll go click on this go button and here in return now we can see that here we have all those values concatenated with this semicolon. Click on this extra options, full text, click on this go button and again if I go click on the SQL tab, let's paste all those code one more time, click on this go button and now we can see that here we have the first user, then here we have the second user, semicolon, third user and here we have the fourth user. Now successfully, now this is the overall concept that how to use cursor inside MySQL. So finally friends, now we have completed one more basic concept, one more interesting concept inside this MySQL stored procedure course and that is MySQL cursors. In the next video, we'll discuss the concept of MySQL functions. Inside this video topic, again we'll discuss a very amazing concept of this course and that is about MySQL functions. Let's go back to editor. So far inside this complete course, we have discussed lots of amazing ideas, lots of amazing concepts which really helpful to complete the concept of MySQL stored procedure. Now in this case, we'll discuss the concept of MySQL functions. So first thing first, what is a function? So functions are just like a set of code. By the help of that, we can complete a specific functionality. For example, if I want to calculate the length of a string value, so in that case we have to use the concept of length function. Already we had discussed multiple times inside last videos. If I want to join multiple strings into a single string value, I have to use the concept of concat function. So to understand some basic ideas of MySQL functions, let's go back to browser. Then I'll go into the SQL tab. So here, if suppose we have some string value, let's say set string value, let's say name value, and here I have my name here and I want to calculate the name of like the length of this name value. So simply select, then I will use length function and I will pass this name variable with a semicolon. So once we pass here, click on this go button and now we can see that it has returned the length of that name value. Again, click on this SQL tab. For example, if I want to join multiple substring values into a single string value, so inside that case, for example, let's say set or simply select keyword concat function, and here this is first name, this is last name, and I want to separate these two keywords like these two words with a space here. So as we can see that now here we are concatenating three different values by using this concat function. Put a semicolon, click on this go button, and now we can see that it has returned a complete value. Now let's click on this SQL tab. Now next, let's use some more functions. So for example, if I want to convert the lower string value into uppercase, so inside that case, let's just select, then I will use upper as a function, upper, and inside this simply we have to pass a lowercase value. So let's say lowercase value as, let's say uppercase, semicolon. Now if I go click on this go button, and now we can see that the string value what we have passed inside this function now converted into uppercase. So it means that inside MySQL we have multiple options, multiple functions available to do any specific task. Even if I want to get the current timestamp value of this MySQL server, we can use the concept of now function. If I go into the SQL tab, so to get the current date and time value inside MySQL, simply we have to use select and now function. Now, in some cases, if suppose we have some number like -1 to 3, if I want to convert into positive value, simply we have to use ABS function, put a semicolon, click on this go button, and now we can see that -123 is now converted into an absolute value. Now successfully we can see that inside MySQL there are several functions available. By the help of that we can complete each specific task. Now the question is, in case if I need to create my own custom function inside MySQL, is there any option available to create that? So yes friends, we have create function, a statement command. By the help of that we can create our own custom functions inside MySQL. So how to create our custom functions? So simply let's open the SQL tab into new tab. So as we know that inside this MySQL Stored Procedure course, while creating our stored procedure, we have used create procedure command. Now in this case, to create a function, we have to use the concept called create function. So simply the pattern of code will remain same. So delimiter, dollar, then here create keyword. So instead of procedure we have to pass function, then we have to pass the function name. So for example, let's say that I want to create a custom MySQL function which basically returns the square of a number. So here let's say number square. And now next, after this function name, let's pass a parameter, because by the help of that parameter, this function will return the square of that. So inside parenthesis, the syntax will be something called the parameter name. So let's call it as number, and the data type of that number will be an integer. And after this line, also we have to make sure that what basically the data type this function will return. So as we know that whenever inside this function, for example, if I pass number 2 which is an integer type, so int returns square of that number 2 is equals to 4 which is also an integer type. So here also we have to mention the return type of this function. So for that, returns keyword and int keyword. So int is a type of data type. Now here, then after that, same set of code called begin and block delimiter and delimiter semicolon. Then we have to go inside this begin and end block. So as you know that by the help of this custom function, simply we want to return the square of that number. So by using return keyword, here we have the number asterisk, which means that multiplication, and here we have the number. So successful. Now this is the overall concept of this first user defined MySQL function. So I will copy the function name. Let's go click on this go button. As we can see, function created. If I go and open this SQL tab into new tab, and here let's just set, let's say number equals to 100, and the process to call that function simply here like select. Then after that, this is our function name, remember, and inside this function I am passing our number, and let's say as multiplication of 100, put a semicolon. Now this is our function what we had created, and this is the number as an argument we are passing inside this MySQL function. Click on this go button. Now here we can see 100 into 100, that is equals to 10,000. So successfully. Now this is the very basic idea that how to create a custom function inside MySQL. Now let's create one more example. So in this example, simply we'll create one more function, custom function inside MySQL. So whenever if I try to pass any value inside that function, simply it will return the reverse of that value. Now to create this function, let's open SQL tab into new tab, and here the same set of code we have to write here. So let's say delimiter dollar sign, then here create keyword, function keyword, and let's say reverse of string value. Now in this function simply we'll pass any string value, and this function will return the reverse of that value. Now here we'll accept an argument that is of a string type. So here let's say any string, something like the name of that variable, and here it is a type of varchar. Let's say 120 characters will be in length, and here the return type of this function, so let's returns keyword. So it also returns the reverse of that value, which is a type of string value. So here let's say varchar, and let's say 120 in length. Now then after that, here we will have the begin keyword and keyword dollar, then delimiter, and then semicolon. Then I will go into this begin and end block. So first I will create some basic variables. So let's say declare keyword, and here let's say reverse string value, and it is a type of varchar. Let's say 120 characters in length, and the default value will be equals to an empty value. Then here let's say declare one more variable. Let's say counter, which is a type of int, and default value equals to 1. Now let's create one more variable, that is declare. It will be something that the string length, it is a type of int, and here what the string we are passing inside this function, simply it will calculate the length of this string value and store into it. So declare string length int, and the default value is equals to length function of MySQL, and here is the string value. Now next, after this, what I will do, I'll use the concept of while loop. So while, let's use counter less than equals to, and here the string length, let's use do keyword, and then here let's say and while. Then I will go into this while and while, and here what I will do, let's say set, I will copy reverse string value, Then I will use concat function, and inside this concat function, first I will use one more MySQL function that is called substring, and inside this substring, this is our initial value called any string. Just copy, put it here, then let's say counter, counter, and 1. And after getting the first value, we have to store inside this string value. So let's copy and put it here. Now here, this line of code simply means that let's copy, go to VS Code, put it here. So for example, if I take inside any string, let's say equals to hello. Now in this case, whenever the counter value is equals to 1, so inside that case, here it will be substring hello and 1 1. So in this case, if I will go, let's copy, put here. So let's replace this hello here. Now in this case, it will return capital H. Now this capital H will be stored inside this reverse string. So here will be the final output in the first step. Now inside second step, if I copy, let's put here, again we'll have the same value, but this time counter equals to 2. Now this time it will return this E character. Now here E character. Now what basically it will return? So it is returning the E value. Now this E is concatenating with this reverse string, and this reverse string is containing H value. So in this case it will become E and capital H. Now inside third case, if I go, let's copy, put here. So whenever the counter value will be equals to 3, so in this case it will return small l, and here the value will be l will concatenate with this eh. Now we can see that here it is some kind of reverse of this string value. So let's go back to browser. Now here let's say set, then I will go and increment this counter. So counter equals to counter plus 1. Now successfully, here we have the complete logic of this MySQL function. And now next after this while and end while, let's copy this reverse string value and simply by using this return call and put it here. Now successfully, this is our entire logical body concept of this MySQL function. So let's copy this function name. Then I will go here, click on this go button, and okay, here we have some error, but I hope that this function now created. So if I go, let's click on this routines, and now we can see that reverse of a string value. So don't worry about that error. Now the concept is function has been created. If I click on this edit, and one more thing, now look at here type that this is a stored procedure and this is a function. Now this, and also additionally we can see that the return type of these functions like number square will return the integer value, and the reverse of a string value will return a string value. Now let's click on this execute button. So we can see that here we have to pass a value. So for example, if I pass welcome, remember it will return finally will be the reverse of this string value. Click on this go button. And now we can see that automatically the function what we had created, this is now returning the reverse of that value. Now it's really amazing that by the help of this video topic, now we have one more amazing concept of MySQL, that is how to create custom MySQL function. So friends, I hope that almost about each and everything about this course now we have successfully completed inside this MySQL Stored Procedure. So for this amazing video, please give us a thumbs up to like this video, subscribe to this channel. Now let's meet to our next amazing course. So for this session guys, thank you for watching and have a great day.